Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Massive matchup in the Big 12. Cincinnati heading on the road to play Colorado. And why I use the term massive is you look at the landscape of the Big 12 heading into the last weekend of October. You look up at the standings and say, these are two of the better teams that we see in the Big 12 to date. And this feels like a very big game in terms of that Big 12 title contention picture. Cincinnati playing some really good football heading into this one, as is Colorado. That was probably the best overall football game we've seen from Colorado since Coach Prime has been there against Arizona. You start taking a look at the numbers. They only allowed 7 points, only 245 yards of total offense. Travis Hunter only caught 2 footballs in that game, and Colorado still played really good. And I think that shows a lot of people that don't follow this Colorado team all that closely. I mean, Shadir Sanders, Travis Hunter, those are some of the best players in all of college football. There's no doubt in my mind. That being said, like this Colorado team is more than just two players, which is a little bit different from last year. Like last year, it was Shadir Sanders, Travis Hunter. If they did not play great football, Colorado wasn't winning many football games. This Colorado roster, much more complete than what the national media likes to recognize. And then you look at Cincinnati and say, this team is just playing really good football. They have some difference makers on offense that we're going to talk about. I'm fired up for this one. Before we get into the preview and kind of looking at some matchups, just want to say thank you to you guys. It's been a blast taking deep dives into these football games, and the amount of support y'all have continued to show means the absolute world. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into this one. Let's start with this Cincinnati defense, where it's a really fascinating defense. You look at points per game, they're only allowing 19.2 points per game. That's top 20 in the country. That being said, you dive a little bit deeper into the Cincinnati defense and say they're allowing 6.1 yards per play. That's 97th. And so, how do you explain that gap in terms of Cincinnati's giving up a lot of yards per play, but not a lot of points per game? Cincinnati's been really good in the red zone. And if you're looking at one matchup right off the bat that is probably going to be a large contributor to the outcome of this football game, how well can Colorado operate inside the 20? You look at the numbers and say Colorado should be able to move the football against Cincinnati, but in this kind of football game where you're looking at two of the better teams in this conference, field goals aren't going to win you the football game. You got to be able to score touchdowns. That's probably what you're looking at number one for Colorado in offense. Can you score touchdowns in the red zone? I think the second storyline for Colorado heading into this game is how good the offensive line has been. And I think a lot of people across the country watched that Colorado-Nebraska game. That Colorado offensive line clearly struggled in that football game and just kind of wrote this Colorado offensive line off again. This offensive line has been really, really good over the last couple of weeks. You take a look at what they just did against Arizona: 1 sack, 3 tackles for loss. The biggest storyline for me is true freshman Jordan Seaton at that left tackle spot has been playing like one of the better left tackles that we see in this conference. That's really rare. Like that's some freaky stuff. A lot of you guys know I follow the recruiting trail pretty closely. It's hard to find tackles that can come on the field year one and be really, really good. Like Jordan Seaton kind of maybe took some growing pains, so to speak, against that Nebraska team. Ever since that football game, Jordan Seaton has been absolutely nails. And as a result, like this Colorado offensive line has been really, really solid. And I think the second storyline is, Colorado's running the football efficiently. Now, Colorado, we know, is never going to be the best rushing attack that we see in the country. That's just not how this offense is built. And you guys know I'm not going to get on a table and say, take the football out of Shadir Sanders' hands. You look at the strength of this Colorado offense, it is unquestionably Shadir Sanders and all the talent that he has at wide receiver. But if you can run the football effectively, the biggest benefit of doing that is slowing down a pass rush. All of a sudden, defenses can't just pin their ears back, get upfield, and get after the passer. They have to respect what you can do running between the tackles. That's the best way to take a little bit of pressure off the offensive line and pass protection. Colorado's been running the football pretty solid, taking some pressure off the offensive line and pass protection. And as a result, when you give Shadir Sanders that time in the pocket to process and push the ball down the field, there's not a better quarterback in the country. And you look at all the different ways that Colorado can attack you on offense. It's not just Travis Hunter. I mean, Travis Hunter caught 2 footballs against Arizona. Yeah, Travis Hunter is one of, if not the best player in all of college football. That being said, a lot of other weapons on this Colorado team. Will Shepherd has been, in my opinion, so massive for this Colorado offense. I always felt like they were missing that true big bodied boundary wide receiver in 2023. They got one in Will Shepherd. LeJohntay Wester can obviously play. We all know Jimmy Horn from last year. There's so many different ways that Colorado can attack a defense in the passing attack. You have those guys that can work vertically. You have those wide receivers that can work the short intermediate portion of the football field. And when you give Shedeur Sanders time, like, he's going to find one of those weapons and they're going to put points up on the board. And so the two things you're looking at is, can Colorado, one, operate in the red zone? Can Colorado continue to just run the football effectively? And then if you can do those two things, like Shedeur Sanders in this passing attack, they're going to do the rest. Now you flip the sides and say Cincinnati, legitimate difference makers on the offensive side of the football. I think Sorsby's been really, really good at quarterback. They want to throw it more than they run it. But let's start with this running back in Corey Kiner. This is kind of a wild stat. Corey Kiner has 106 attempts on the year. He's broken 51 tackles. I mean, 51 missed tackles forced on 100 attempts is a ludicrous number. And Corey Kiner is one of those running backs that, if he can get to the second level and have the opportunity to make those second level defenders miss, it doesn't just go for 15 yards. It can go 50 and for a touchdown. So if you're Colorado, this is something they struggled against with Kansas State. Like, these linebackers and safeties coming down and making those open field tackles, that's going to be huge against a guy like Corey Kiner. In the passing game, you got to look out for Xavier Henderson, who I think he was a really touted guy out of high school, has really figured it out for the Cincinnati offense. They got some dudes for the Cincinnati offense that I don't think a lot of people expected to see heading into 2024. Now you flip the sides, talk about this Colorado defense. The haters are going to be pissed. Like, you look at Colorado and say, what did they just do against Arizona? 7 points allowed, only 245 total yards. Arizona averaged less than 4.5 yards per play. This Colorado defense is starting to really figure it out. And I think it starts with the front seven. I mean, you take a look at the pass rush for Colorado that was so bad last year. I mean, Colorado last year had to rely on sending pressure if they wanted to get after the quarterback. Now you look at the front four and say 7 sacks, 7 tackles for loss in one game against Arizona, whether it's Samuel Okunlola, whether it's Wade, they got so many guys that can create negative plays behind the chains. In this 2024 season, they've been very good stopping the run. Like, outside of just a couple of games, most notably that Kansas State game, Colorado has been really good stopping the run. And we all know what they have in the defensive back room in terms of the secondary. When you can stop the run, when you can get after the passer, and you have defensive backs that can hold their own on islands, guys like Travis Hunter, Colton Hood has played very good football. It's all of a sudden a really hard defense to move the football on. Now you get into the pick here, Cincinnati coming on the road to play Colorado. I think Colorado is going to be able to move the football. I think it's a matter of if they can score in the red zone and score touchdowns in the red zone. This Colorado team, in my opinion, continues to be really undervalued. And this has really nothing to do with Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati's been a team that's really impressed me to start 2024 as well. I'm going to take Colorado to cover the 4 points at home. I think it's going to be, one, a really rowdy environment, 10:15 Eastern time kickoff. But I think more importantly, this Colorado team is much more complete than we're used to talking about with Colorado. Yes, they have the star talent, guys like Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, but 1 through 11 on both the offense and defense, it's significantly better than it was last year. Cincinnati, again, I like Cincinnati, but I look at that 6.1 yards per play on defense allowed, 97th in the country. I think Colorado can move it. Now the question is, can they score touchdowns in the red zone? With this Colorado rushing attack kind of turning it on, you feel a little bit more comfortable about it. Give me Colorado to cover the 4 points at home against Cincinnati. Going to be a fun one. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.